Things aren't always what they seem to be, especially when it comes to family. Things that happen behind the curtains can be so shocking that they change everything we thought we knew about the people we trust. This is very clear in the cases of the Hart family, Retta Mays, and Chris Watts. Families that seem perfect were actually hiding some very bad things. It's hard to hear these stories, but they teach us that we can't always trust what we see. In order to find out what really happened, let us look more closely at these awful events. From the outside, it looks like the Hart family story is full of heartbreaking truths. They look like a happy, perfect family on the outside, but they were hiding something that no one could understand. When lives are at risk, this sad story reminds us to think about what we think we know and dig deeper. 2 parents and 6 children were riding in a GMC Yukon in Mendocino County, California, on March 26, 2018. The vehicle crashed into a 100-foot-high cliff. The car hit something and came to a stop on the rocky Pacific Ocean below. In the beginning, many people thought it was just a terrible accident. However, it became very clear very quickly that the driver, Jennifer Hart, had done this on purpose. The people who were hurt were Jennifer, her wife Sarah, and their 6 adopted children, Marcus, Hannah, Devontae, Abigail, Jeremiah, and Sierra. The news shocked the whole country. How on earth could something so terrible happen? Based on what you saw on social media, you would have thought the Harts were a great family. A married couple named Jennifer and Sarah had taken in 6 kids who had all come from bad situations. They seemed like caring and forward-thinking parents because they posted pictures of their happy kids on family vacations with positive captions. In 2014, a picture was taken of their son Devontae hugging a police officer during a protest. This picture became famous. The message spread like wildfire because it was a sign of love and hope. Jennifer was often the person who spoke for the family online. Her posts showed that the family was at rallies, supporting each other through messages of solidarity and taking part in community events. A lot of people saw them as the perfect example of a modern, caring family. That being said, all of those positive posts were hiding something much worse. Jennifer and Sarah met in college, fell in love, and made plans to start a big, happy family together. They took in Marcus, Hannah, and Abigail, 3 siblings, as their own in 2006. 2 years later, they adopted Devontae, Jeremiah, and Sierra, who were also siblings. All of the children were adopted from McCann American families and was seen as a great way to stow acceptance. Still, cracks started to show up right from the start of the process. Not only did teachers and neighbors notice strange patterns, but people they didn't know also did. The kids often looked like they weren't getting enough food because their clothes didn't fit right, and they did things that showed they were scared and anxious. At one point, Abigail told a teacher that she had been denied meals as a punishment for taking food. Hannah was in another incident where she jumped out of a second-floor window and ran to a neighbor's house, pleading for help. The thing she begged was, "Please don't make me go back." Even though the Harts had reported the situation to Child Protective Services (CPS) more than once, they were able to avoid serious consequences. In addition to moving around a lot and teaching the kids at home, they also told the kids what to say when the police came to visit. The fact that they were able to stay hidden was both strange and disappointing. When 2018 came around, the family had moved to Woodland, Washington. The nearby residents Bruce and Dana DeKalb were the first to notice the worrying signs. A lot of the time, the kids, especially Devontae, would go to their house to ask for food. Dana was told by Devontae that his parents weren't giving them food and that he didn't want to go back to his hometown. He asked them very kindly to hide any food he needed in their yard. Child Protective Services was called by Dana because she felt unsafe. Child Protective Services went to the Hart house on March 23, 2018, but no one was there to answer the door. Over the next few days, the agency tried to get in touch with the family several times, but they were nowhere to be found. Finally, after 3 days, the GMC Yukon was found in Mendocino County, close to the waterfalls. After some time, witnesses said they had seen the car parked for a long time before it suddenly sped forward and went over the edge. The crash was meant to happen. At first, the accident was thought to have been a terrible accident. On the other hand, as the investigators dug deeper, they found out a horrifying truth. The driver, Jennifer Hart, was so drunk at the time of the accident that it made it very hard for her to make decisions. Toxicology reports show that Sarah and some of the children had large amounts of Benadryl in their bodies, which makes sense since the Irug can make Tim sleepy. There was important evidence in the black box of the car. It turned out that Jennifer had sped up the car so much that it went over the edge of the cliff. The car's brakes were not pressed, and the gas pedal was pressed all the way down to the floor. Researchers looked through Jennifer's phone and found some very disturbing things. In the days before the accident, she had looked into different ways to kill yourself, overdoses, and whether drowning was a painless way to die. It was found that there was a long history of neglect and abuse after more research was done. Over the years, Child Protective Services had received many reports that the Harts were abusing and starving their children. The family was able to avoid responsibility more than once because they moved around a lot and tried to avoid being watched. The terrible thing that happened to the Hart family was talked about all over the country. People were shocked. How could something bad be going on behind the scenes of a family that looked so perfect? What did the system do wrong that it couldn't protect these kids? Because of this case, important questions about the adoption and foster care systems came up. Both Jennifer and Sarah were white, even though the children they adopted were African. Advocates said that the lack of oversight could have been caused by a number of things, such as differences in culture and racism that is built into the system. Some people said that the system didn't do enough to make sure the kids were safe, and that it focused too much on how the kids looked instead of how Harini were. In general, people were sad and angry about what happened. Jennifer used social media to show that Naeni was de Mekansanate. Vow. Nugners become a pace where Diopal can about their sadness and anger. Finally, the picture of Devontae hugging a police officer showed up again. This time, it was a haunting reminder of what had been lost. Marcus, Hannah, Devontae, Abigail, Jeremiah, and Sierra were close to this accident, but they were also part of it. The kids who were being thought about had big smiles, unique personalities, and big plans for the future. People who knew MEM, like teachers and Hainbors, Salte were strong and kind. Even tough may not been infon nor able things. In particular, Devontae was remembered for what he did because he was brave and kind. Behind the scenes, though, he was just a young boy begging for help. The picture of him that went viral was a sign of hope and unity. Hannah was known for being brave and kind, as shown by her desperate attempt to run away and find safety in the community. The stories of each child serve as a reminder of the potential that was taken away from them. It wakes you up to hear the story of the Hart family. These facts show that looks aren't always what they seem to be, and that kids who are easily hurt need extra protection. Possible that we will never fully understand what drove Jennifer and Sarah Hart to do such a horrible thing. But their story makes us want to do more to stop tragedies like theirs from happening again. One family is not the only thing this story is about. We should all learn from this to pay attention, ask questions, and speak up for people who can't do it themselves. The Hart family seemed perfect on the outside, but they were hiding a terrible secret. Their story should make us want to look deeper than what we see. Because of the deaths of the Hart children, suggestions for change have been made. There are many people who want stricter oversight of adoptive families, more thorough follow-ups on Child Protective Services reports, and better training for social workers to spot signs of abuse. The foster care and adoption systems must put the safety and well-being of children above all else. Improvements are being made to these systems all the time, but there is still a lot of work to be done. In honor of the Hart children who died, change should be pushed forward. Their tragic deaths have changed the way we think about and deal with the problem of child welfare in this country. The murders of the Hart family are a shocking reminder that things are not always what they seem to be. It's easy to be fooled by carefully chosen pictures and stories, but life often tells a different story. The lessons we've learned from this tragedy can help us make the world a safer, more valued, and more loved oasis to Enclorin. We should keep the memories of Marks, Hannah, Devontae, Abigail, Jeremiah, and Sierra in mind, as we woo make me word to os were no clomas os sur instance ever again. Time for the next case, which make us hard to believe how a person supposed to save lives became a reason to end STEM. In the fall of 2018, it was a cold morning, and rumors began to spread through the halls of the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Veterans of the armed forces were supposed to be able to go to this hospital to get care, find comfort, and heal after a long time of service. No matter what, there was a problem in this hospital. Patients were dying out of the blue. Most of them were old veterans, and many of them had been in fairly stable conditions before they died. In the beginning, it looked like a string of bad luck or coincidences. There was, however, growing suspicion as the number of deaths kept going up. It became clear that something more sinister was going on. Retta Mays, a nurse's aide, was slowly making the hospital a dangerous place for the people she was supposed to keep safe. Such things were taking place in a location that was meant to help the weakest people. This was being done by someone who should have been trusted. How, then, could someone who seemed so normal, so nice, and so humble be responsible for such horrible things? A lot of people across the country would be shocked and confused by the answer. She was born in a quiet West Virginia town on January 17, 1972. WV is where Retta Mays was born. Her personality made her someone you'd expect to see while she worked quietly behind the scenes in a hospital, helping the elderly and giving comfort to those who needed it the most. She worked as a nursing assistant at the Lewis A. Johnson Veterans Affairs Medical Center. Her main job was to take care of veterans' health needs. Many of them had served in wars that happened in other countries. She said that these veterans were more than just patients. They were living proof of what her country had done to protect her. They had children, brothers, and husbands. These men had given up their youth to serve their country. And in return, they were entitled to care. When they got older, it looked like Retta was doing a good job. She treated everyone with kindness and respect, and she did the work she was given without any problems. She had good reviews from her co-workers, and her bosses thought she was a reliable team member. On the surface, she seemed like the perfect healthcare worker. She was quiet, did a simple job in a place full of heroes, and everything about her seemed perfect. There was another side to Retta Mays that she kept hidden from the public. It was very different from the caring and dedicated person she seemed to be. Over time, she started to change in a way that surprised her. Between 2017 and 2018, she went on a killing spree in which she regularly gave her weak patients lethal doses of insulin, even though many of them did not need the medicine. Not only did these deaths not happen by chance, they were planned murders that were carried out with the chilling accuracy of someone who knew exactly now to stay midden. I find it hard to believe that something like that could happen. Just the thought of a nurse's aide hurting the people she was supposed to care for on purpose sends shockwaves through your body. The question is how Retta, who was a nurse like any other, could have turned into a murderer with a old heart. It's strange that she killed them because she was a veteran who had given a lot for their country. The medical staff at the hospital started to notice a very unsettling pattern as the death toll kept going up. It looked like veterinarians who had been in pretty good health and hadn't been having any major health problems were all of a sudden dying for no reason. The fact that these deaths often happened during Retta's shifts made things even scarier. Some of the victims were old, and others had health problems that had been going on for a long time. However, the fact that these deaths happened at the same time and in the same way seemed too strange to be an accident. Finally, the hospital's leaders and staff began to look into the matter further. As soon as possible, they started talking to the nurses and aides who were on duty at the time of these deaths. They also looked at patient records and medication administration logs, and what they found was deeply disturbing. Retta Mays was the name that kept coming up. Investigators learned that Retta had been giving her patients insulin shots, even though they did not need the medicine medically. When insulin is given in large amounts, it can cause severe hypoglycemia, a condition in which blood sugar drops so low that it could be fatal. Some of the symptoms that could come from this are seizures, coma, and eventually death. On the other hand, this is exactly what happened with these veterans. There was no way for anyone to see Retta giving insulin because she had learned how to do it that way. It was her job to make it look like the veterans' deaths were caused by natural events or problems related to health problems they already had. She was very good at this. She was able to hide her tracks by making the deaths look like normal hospital deaths. But she was really messing with that person's life. But why is that? For what reason did Retta choose to carry out this evil plan? Was the power what caused it? Who was in charge? Maybe the desire for attention? Or should it be something deeper? Something we'll never fully understand? No matter what made her do what she did. It is clear that she did it on purpose. She was very picky about who she killed. Over the course of several months, she killed at least 7 veterans, though some think the number could have been even higher. It wasn't until 2020 that people found out about Retta May's scary reign of terror. The hospital staff finally found out about the shockingly high number of deaths that happened during her shifts. This led to the start of an investigation into her crimes. It was very scary what they found when they started to look more closely. Investigators looked through medical records, talked to coworkers, and looked at death certificates. Bit by bit, a scary picture started to emerge. When the full list of crimes Retta had committed was made public after she was arrested, everyone was shocked. In 2021, Retta Mays was accused of killing at least 7 veterans. There were still a lot of families who couldn't believe that someone who had been trusted to care for their loved ones could have betrayed them in such a terrible way. The families of the people she hurt went through a painful and emotional trial. The courtroom was full of anger, sadness, and disbelief as the evidence was shown. It became clear what was really going on, and the courtroom was filled with these strong feelings individuals. The woman who was supposed to keep these men safe killed them. The families of the people who had been killed went through unbearable pain. They did not only not know these people, but they also had a lot of affection for them. These were people who had served their country honorably and were now in the care of someone like Retta. There was so much sadness that many people couldn't even begin to understand how something like this could happen in a place that was supposed to be a place of care and healing. Because of her past crimes, Retta Mays was given a sentence of life in prison without the chance of parole in December 2021. In terms of justice, that was the very least that could have been done for the families of the victims. Because of the sentence, they couldn't bring back their loved ones or undo the trauma they had been through. But Retta would never be able to hurt someone else again, the Retta Mays case. On the other hand, makes us worry about trust, oversight in healthcare settings, and how easy it is for bad people to hide behind a smile and a uniform. No one seemed to have any ideas that something was wrong for a very long time. What was the reason it took so many deaths for someone to notice? What other horrible things are out there hiding in plain sight behind the mask of normalcy? This is probably the scariest thought of all. This story about Retta Mays is a scary reminder that the people we trust the most with our health and safety are not always what they seem to be. It's a good reminder that we need to be extra careful and keep an eye on things, especially when it comes to the most vulnerable people among us. Also, the story will never be forgotten by the families of the people who died or by the people in the community, who will always wonder how one person could have caused so much pain and suffering through their actions. In the end, Retta Mays' actions show how dark people can be, even the most normal ones. Even though she was found guilty and sentenced to prison, the damage she did to the families of the veterans, the community, and the very institution that was supposed to protect those who had given so much for their country will never go away. Now, this last case is a shocker where a person supposed to be the protector of the family turned into a destroyer. It was a quiet Sunday morning in August 2018 when the world learned of an awful loss that made no sense at all. For people, a mother, a father, and 2 young daughters went missing in the small town of Frederick, Colorado, in the state of Colorado. 3 people went missing: Shannon Watts, her 2 young daughters Bella and Celeste, and her unborn son, who was due in a few weeks. It quickly became one of the scariest and most devastating murder cases the country had ever seen. Shannon Watts had 2 daughters named Bella and Celeste. At first, it looked like this case was just another case of a person going missing. But as time went on, it became clear what was really going on. Chris Watts, the father, who was supposed to be their rock and protector, turned out to be the killer. When investigators made their shocking discovery almost right away, everyone was shocked. There was a sense that Chris Watts had everything they could want. The man was normal and lived a normal life. His family seemed to be the picture of suburban bliss. Man like everyone else. His wife, Shannon, ran a small business selling health and wellness products while he worked as an operator for an oil company. They were lucky to have two beautiful girls, Celeste, 3 years old, and Bella, 4 years old. Also, Shannon was carrying their third child, a son they planned to name Nico. Their third child was going to be born soon. From the outside, it looked like they were a happy, loving family. There were lots of pictures on their social media accounts from trips, parties, and big events in their lives. It looked like they had everything they could want: a beautiful home, a bright future, and a life that was picture perfect. But their lives were very different when they weren't talking to each other. Chris and Shannon's marriage had been having a lot of problems for a while now. Their relationship, which used to be very close, was starting to get worse, and Chris seemed disconnected. There was something wrong with Chris, which Shannon saw, even though the family looked happy from the outside. There were rumors that there were issues going on behind the scenes. Some of these problems were emotional distance between the couple and money problems. Shannon, on the other hand, kept her marriage hopeful by posting on social media all the time about how much she loved Chris and how grateful she was for their family. But she had no idea about the dark secret Chris was keeping from her. Things went horribly wrong on August 13th, 2018. Shannon came back from a business trip to Arizona with her two daughters in the morning of that day. Chris had already gone home to wait for her. Chris went to take Bella and Celeste to a neighbor's house and came back to find Shannon lying in their bedroom. Chris says that he and Shannon had a fight that morning. Chris also says that when he got home, Shannon was already lying there. He said that he found his wife dead from strangulation on their bed, which was a surprising turn of events. When asked about Bella and Celeste, he said they had died of suffocation in their beds. Still, the scary truth was much worse and more sinister than Chris would let on to the public. As the investigation went on, Chris's story began to come out. The details of his role in their deaths were shocking and horrifying. The police quickly found out that Chris had been having an affair with Nicole Kessinger, who was also one of his co-workers. They had only been dating for a few months before the murders, and Chris was having an affair with Nicole while he was married to Shannon. Based on the facts, his affair was a major factor in the series of events that led to the horrible murders. He was ready to do anything to get rid of his family, even his unborn son, whom he had been looking forward to meeting. Chris was so eager to start a new life with Nicole that he was ready to do anything to get rid of his family. Chris finally told the police that he was responsible for the murders after being questioned over and over again. This proved the truth. After a fight in which Shannon asked him about the affair, he admitted that he had strangled her while she was struggling to breathe. Still, what Chris said about what he did after that was the scariest part. After that, he suffocated his two young daughters, Celeste and Bella, and then drove their bodies to the oil field where he worked. He had already killed Shannon before this happened. He disposed of the girls' bodies there by putting them in oil tanks and burying Shannon in a shallow grave. His actions, which were planned, cruel, and morally wrong, were envied by his desire to start a new life with his mistress and run away from the life he had built with his family. There are so many horrible details about what Chris did to his family that it's hard to imagine how someone could be able to do such horrible things. The girls were taken away from the world way too soon, without any chance of fighting back, because they were too young to do so. Bella and Celeste were killed by a man who had been their father in the past. They should have been playing and growing up with their family in the safety of their own home. Shannon was a mother who loved her kids very much and had full faith in the man she married. But she was betrayed in such a deep way that it killed her, her daughters, and her unborn son. Chris Watts did not say what he did without much trouble. In the beginning, he tried to say that he had nothing to do with the murders. In interviews that were shown on TV, he even begged for their safe freedom. His lies started to fall apart as the investigators dug deeper into his story. At first, he seemed like a sad husband and father. Chris finally told the truth, which broke his heart. He had killed Shannon and then suffocated his daughters. He did this because he didn't want to deal with the consequences of Waka and me Wayne to Jaraway Tom as Amy are. People in Chris's community who had thought of him as a loving husband and father were shocked by what he did. Understanding how someone who seemed so normal and honest could be able to do such horrible things is beyond my understanding. People all over the country tried to make sense of something that was beyond their understanding, sending shockwaves across the country. All 3 counts of murder were found guilty by Christopher Watts in November 2018. After being found guilty, he was given a sentence of life in prison without the chance of parole. The families of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico went through unbearable pain because they lost their loved ones. People in Shanann's family, especially her parents and brother, had to mourn not only the death of their daughter and grandchildren, but also the loss of their innocence in the worst way possible. Another thing that happened because of the case was that it showed how terrible domestic violence, cheating, and the darkness that can hide behind closed doors can be. The story of the murders of the Watts family is a scary reminder of how a life that seems normal can hide the darkest secrets. It makes us think about how well we know the people around us, how far someone will go to hide who they really are, and how easy it is for someone to fall into a life of lying and violence. All of these questions make you feel bad to think about. There is no way to make up for the pain, loss, and heartbreak that Chris Watts caused for the families of those who were killed. Nico, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste will never forget what he did to them, and the wounds it left behind will never heal. What he did hurt me so much that it will never heal. The truth about their lives, which were cut short far too soon, will always haunt anyone who learns about what happened to them, even though justice has been done. Chris Watts will have to deal with the effects of his deception for the rest of his life. See how we learn from the Hart family, Retta Mays, and Chris Watts' stories that people, even the ones we trust the most, aren't always what they seem to be. We should pay attention to what's going on around us and not ignore signs that something might be wrong because of these cases. It's hard to face the truth about these events, but they teach us to be careful and to look deeper to protect the people we care about.